Hey, Cece Strong back with you for story time number two. So I'm just drinking basic Lipton tea, nothing special in it, and it's actually steeping right now. But I wanted to share with you that a lot of the things that were put in place for the case against me in October of 2021 had already been stirring and cooking as early as January of 2021. Well, what did that look like? In October of 2020, I had a newly assigned commander who was over my unit and the person I directly reported to. At the time, she was acting commander. She wasn't commander yet, but she was filling the seat and in an acting capacity for the commander position. This person was someone I had worked with before and never had any issues with. As a matter of fact, I had worked with them during a time where they had a brief passing by within a unit that I worked in. And there were a couple of things that happened during that time that stood out to me about her behavior and mannerisms. Now, this is not to badmouth, but this is factual. I actually had people who reached out to me who told me, I'm sorry, or oh, be careful, and other things about this particular person. And at that time, me knowing that I had worked with them before and having those things in the back of my mind, I knew to be cautious, but I also was willing to be open to see where this was going. Unfortunately, October, November, December, she was very supportive of me. And this was at the end of 2020. However, in January, things took a turn. She actually called me into the office and said that she had received an anonymous complaint about me. And as she started speaking, all of the words that she was sharing with me were what I saw as buzzwords. The words that, if used and the people really complained about them, meant that there was nothing and nowhere she could go other than an investigation or looking into things. They were the heavy hitters, bullying, and, even as far as mistreatment to someone with a disability. Well, you can imagine me sitting there floored because nothing like this had ever been told to me, and I had never had anything like this happen. But I listened intently, and because of the expression on my face, she actually said, "You look like you're shocked." I said, "Absolutely, I am. Let me ask you, aren't you, considering what you know about me?" And she says, "Well, blank and the other blank blanks said you did this." And she gave me names. The craziest thing in the world is that you just told me that it was an anonymous complaint, but now suddenly you give me names. So one of the best things that I could have done was that I shut my mouth and I simply started taking notes. Now, if anyone knows me, you know that I write and I journal and I take notes on everything because a lot of it is that I want to be able to reflect back and make sure that I check off things and do things that I'm supposed to do, be it with work, even at home, in my everyday walk of life. This is what I am used to doing. I also learned, in all honesty, that a lot of times me saying something compared to someone else saying it wasn't always taken as serious. Now, before you go into the, oh my gosh, because that's usually where it goes, calm down, where people will a lot of times say about someone who looks like me, and I'll just say it, a Black woman. Before you go down that road, I can tell you sincerely that I've experienced it on more than one occasion where I've said something and yeah, maybe so, we'll consider it. And then that same exact thing is said by someone else who doesn't look like me. And suddenly it's the perfect thing. If you too have experienced that, you know what I'm speaking to. But I digress. Back into the office, sitting there with my commander, she said anonymous complaints, but then gave me names. Crazy. And the way she described it let me know that she was talking about six people in particular. And of those six people, how many do you think of the 15 involved in my case were mentioned? Huh, just about all of them, plus a few more. Anyway, there was an email that I sent immediately after that meeting with my commander. I was the unit commander for food services at the time. I again will use the bleeps as I'm bleeping out names. Hi, bleep, my commander. I am attaching information to assist with clarifying some of the events which led to the complaint made, stemming from the anonymous letter received by the department in August of 2020. Now, she told me that she had received this letter in August of 2020, 2 months before she was even my supervisor. So, for whatever reason, she's working at an entirely different location, and supposedly someone sent this anonymous letter. Can't make this up. I'll go back. Received by the department in August of 2020. In an interview with OA3 bleep bleep, and then their employee number. I would be remiss if I did not share that hearing I was even remotely thought to have subjected employees to discriminatory behavior, i.e., favoritism, disabilities, racial discrimination, getting rid of the OA items prior to my arrival, etc. Now, some of that was what she was sharing with me, that I was alleged to have had some favoritism, mistreating people with disabilities, racial discrimination, and getting rid of the OA items. Nothing could have been farther from the truth. But if it's said and it's put out there and then grasped by my supervisor and presented to me, then, or even darker, if it was already brewing and cooking up because of the past 15 plus years earlier, then okay, that's what led us to this day. This was none short of a gut punch. This could not have been farther from the truth. The liability risk with the lack of initial admonishment at the time, coupled with various unknown variables with this allegation, are of concern for me. It speaks to leaving employees, including me, unprotected for months. Them with me possibly further harassing them, if this had actually been the case, and me with possible filing of additional undue claims by the anonymous author or any of the 5 other employees. This number is so assumed with the statements about the OAs, of which there are 6 total. In the most extreme case, this could have been detrimental to the position I hold. I take none of these things lightly and understand the need to meet with me to close this now unit level rebrief of policies as part of procedure. I have to mention that I acquired a unit that was sorely mismanaged, and my goal has been to start with the little I did have and build. I had no real records, tracking files, documentation to draw from, and Sergeant Blank had spoken about being overlooked, as he was a sergeant filling the position of a lieutenant with the demands at the level of a captain. He also admitted to being in retirement mode for the last few years at the unit. While the retirement mode is unacceptable, in hindsight, with what I have now been faced with over the past 3 years, it is understandable how much was neglected. With him having the lack of support, his statements and opinion in meetings with higher ranking individuals, and without the needed experience, level of leadership skills, and or with the lack of desire to truly lead the unit. This caused stagnation for several years and left much to be deferred to the subordinate supervisors. They, in essence, were often left to their own devices, setting their own schedules and having more leeway than safe for a unit of this size. There were many challenges, as evidenced by the dilapidated equipment, lack of hiring, large number of vacancies, and even the manipulation of the system. One example is with an LTea working a desk for 7 years. IHSU then reviewing his case file and notifying the unit that he was full duty 5 years prior. This, like many other awareness moments, became common for me and continue with me addressing each as it arises. Now, let me pause here for a second because this is a very lengthy email. But that particular person who had been sitting on the desk, who should have been actually out in the field, had worked and sat at the desk for 5 years, but had been already returned to full duty. He had been covered by another OA who had said to me and continued to place his name on a list of those that had been light duty. Sadly enough, this would rise to this awareness being brought to his attention and him making claims that I had somehow grabbed his arms or hands looking for tattoos, hence the claim in the case about me being a thug. Witness number 3. I've already done a video about it. You can go back and watch that. But I'll continue. The FSU Collateral Duty Assessment Project, CDAP, so officially named in March 2020, yet started in May of 2018 with my first 2 promotions, was implemented to assist with restructuring the unit overall. I began with sectioning the unit into North and South with the promotion of the 2 senior food managers in May 2018. This was followed by schedule restructuring for managements to supervisors and ultimately a zonal restructure to what is now FSU North, FSU Central, and FSU South area. This took place over approximately 11 months between May 2018 to April 2019, with the review and closeout of 13 cases left by my predecessor, Sergeant Bleep, the opening of the HOJ Cafe, the reset to the food we serve, preventative measures through better quality food, PMBQF, the implementation of a new job position, assistant cook, and introduction of the FSU training program for all first-line supervisors, management, and sworn. Saying the past 3 years have been busy would be an understatement. Add to this a pandemic, which further reduced those 3 years to, let's say, 2, as it dominated my entire year 2020 and halted many additional programs and projects that I had planned. As I also mentioned during our meeting, I have been able to hire, promote 60 plus people, thus impacting what is equivalent to more than a third of my staffing complement. Prior to this, it was noted that OA3 blank blank had only hired 17 people in a 3-year time frame, 4 in 2015, 3 in 2016, and 10 in 2017. Now, let me pause here because this is the person that made some egregious claims in an email that kicked off this case against me. It was the only person identified as having said something or submitted something that started this chain reaction. So allegedly, there was an email that was sent to my commander on the 12th of August of 2021. This person left in early 2019, but was sending emails and actually had reached out to other supervisors prior to this supervisor about some same complaints. During those times, I was able to point them to ombuds ticket numbers, which are numbers on complaints that don't necessarily rise to the level of needing anything further, yet need to be documented. And I was able to point to those, disputing what she was claiming, yet when she got to this particular supervisor, it worked for what they were trying to build. I digress. I learned what personnel truly should have been and began to restructure in this area for concentrated effort in filling vacancies. This has had a huge impact on the morale of the unit as a whole. For this reason, allegations of this nature are even more hurtful and not understood. As you know and spoke to, there is always the 5% who are not happy with change. Let me pause here. She mentioned the fact that people are going to complain. You as a unit commander, Cedra, are going to have those type of things happen. But the large majority of the people there, thank you for it, even during the meeting. The move to CRDF with her, meaning the person that was said to have been the main complainer, original selection of Twin Towers, one of the 3 assigned areas for the 3 OA3s, had been thoroughly vetted through employee relations, SEIU 721, and injury and health support. And I named the 3 people that were in the meeting with me who actually sanctioned this. We held a meeting with 2 of those entities and all information was shared with the final outcome and planning for the move. Ms. Blank was the only OA3 actively working at the time, as blank blank had been out since January or February of 2019, and blank blank recently returned after being out for almost a year with COVID-19 fear. Blank is now working in the central area for Twin Towers Correctional Facility, MCJ, and CTC. Yet all three OA3s were contacted for understanding of these moves and given the opportunity to speak with union representatives and management staff. During the meeting with the union and ER, Ms. Blank was asked to go to the floor where the meeting was being held and speak with ER, the employee relations, and the union. I was not present at the meeting. However, I had phoned in to explain the CDAP program and reason for the transfers. I was on the speakerphone in the center of the desk. She, at that time, refused to attend the meeting when asked to speak on her own behalf. It should be noted that the two OA2s, two assigned at FSU, are working, one north area and the other at FSU headquarters. So the two people right below her in rank were already split on either side of the county. The one OA1 is doing all personnel entries and data tracking. All three positions have been with them working within their job specifications in more recent times because of the restructure, coupled with an increased workload because now they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, more suiting to that of an administrative supervisory clerical staff member. Prior to this, they were each given mainly concentrated areas of workload conducive to that of a staff member of lower rank. This was seen with Ms. Blank working with other ranks within the procurement section, yet unable to actively supervise. This too is understandable with the lack of real oversight for her position. Again, she had been left mainly to her own devices. OA3 Blank was in charge of the procurement section within a unit and later was reassigned with the restructuring of the procurement section. She then supervised 2 employees from the original 10 or more in the non-food area of the procurement section. She often expressed that she did not and was not knowledgeable of the work of others she supervised, nor did she display an effort to change this mindset and to grow. With regard to her interview complaints, I would ask you to refer to a very truncated timeline of events with Ms. Blank, see the attachment, which includes counseling through PLE, contact with the intake specialist unit for an ombuds ticket, and various incidents which are documented over the time of my tenure here. I made my previous supervisor, assistant division director blank blank, aware of these concerns, and she met with Ms. Blank at one point. The meeting was requested by Ms. Blank around the same time I notified Ms. Blank, my previous supervisor, of the concerns. I later learned they discussed ways for her to be more engaged in meetings, even speaking to her arms folded and comments which were not supportive to the overall mission. At one point in the planning and addressing of her concerns with the move, she expressed the desire to file a claim of stress, naming me. It was at a time when I had little to no contact with her for about a year and was only linked to the transfer. She, on the same day, stated she was not desirous of going through with the claim, and I had to instruct the manager of food services to complete the filing of the claim for her protection and accurate documentation, and have her decline in writing on an employee illness and injury form. It was later told this had been completed, and there were also notes documented by OA1 in the personnel tracking for FSU. One note stating that part of the reason to rescind Ms. Blank's claim was because she does not have interaction with the source of stress. This is correct, as it had been approximately a year since I had began to allow supervisors to deal directly with their own subordinates and began transitioning into further restructuring of chain of command and overall operational support. This was of concern when I learned yesterday that although an earn number had been acquired for the report and had been told this reporting was filed, there had been no administrative paperwork processed for the same. Additional information yielded statements by a senior food manager who shared that the paperwork had been in the possession of Ms. Blank and never filed. I had asked a sergeant for confirmation of a file number being pulled, and of course, this information was given. Further notes led to the discovery of claims that Ms. Blank never had paperwork because she told the manager that she did not want to do anything further after all and did not sign. This was quote from the actual employee restriction light duty report completed weekly by the OA1. I believe the basis for her complaint was rooted in the fact that she no longer supervised the procurement team. She was no longer able to work solely in the procurement section, non-food, ordering equipment, which I learned was not as time-consuming as I was originally led to believe. She was not happy with the changes and expressed that she had not been consulted with certain decisions from the office of the unit commander. I believe she felt this way as it was in stark contrast to what she had been used to with Sergeant Blank. He had mentioned that FSU runs itself. This is in no way to speak ill of Sergeant Blank. This was information he readily shared during our 2 months of transitioning in for me and retirement out for him. Additional information regarding other OAs in the unit, and this was addressed because she gave these names after her saying it was anonymous. In addition to all this, I was falsely accused, subsequent to a filing of a POE on another sergeant, of falsifying documentation in an evaluation for Ms. email writer of the case that was placed on me. This information was determined to be incorrect as EPITS tracks entries and the final evaluation had been entered months prior to her complaint. I also spoke with OA3 blank blank about her involvement with the LET light duty, full duty incident and the realization by a representative of the IHSU that this particular LET had been full duty for many years. Ms. Blank shielding this information from view, and it was only revealed when I had her review what would later be over 40 staff members in varying stages of light duty. Prior to this, she had only been reporting IOD, ROD, long-term absences, and those light duty individuals that rose to more urgent need, basically at her own discretion. OA2 blank blank, who had been allowed to remain working on the north end at the original request of the sergeant I replaced, became upset when she was asked to help at the headquarters office one day per week. She called off for several of the Mondays assigned and later presented a doctor's note with the inability to drive more than a short distance, thus avoiding work at SBB. There were other incidents with this same person as well. OA2 blank blank was moved from the personnel position with the restructure following a knowledge of her not being completely forthright with all the unit needs and also with her job specification speaking more to supervision, an area we sorely lack in for the unit. The position she held was more suiting for the last OA1 blank blank, whose job specifications speak directly to handling personnel needs. When asked to simply do their jobs, even at the bare minimum, they were not pleased. As I stated while we met, this is both shocking and unnerving when considering all the encounters with this employee ultimately leading to this meeting. I thank you for listening and hearing my side of what I believe led to these claims. I will always continue to help the unit grow and the staff members seek success with their employment. That was my email. Very long, I know, but here is the problem. You're accusing me of atrocities that are off the charts. Some of these things so bad that it speaks to someone who probably should never have worn a badge or a uniform. I don't take that lightly, being lied on. I have a lot of honor, not in the uniform and the badge, but in my name, my dad's name. May he rest in peace. I don't think he, nor I, and any of us that carried his name, or my husband who asked me to carry his, deserve to have their name drug through the mud. Had I done any of these things, I would stand tall for them, but I simply didn't. My supervisor responded with, "Hi, Cedra. Please see highlighted areas below. Also, let me know if you want me to forward this information to the ISU, the same unit that she was to turn in the reporting about these anonymous complaints who then miraculously had names." Her highlighted areas, actually, as I scrolled down, she said, "I appreciated hearing your experiences with Ms. Blank, the primary complainer, and more importantly, the changes implemented to grow the unit and the people who depend on you to do what is best for the betterment of all and not just a select few. As a unit commander, you have a responsibility and duty to continue encouraging your teams because there is a silent majority who thank you for it. Complaints are inevitable because there is always someone who for too long may have been allowed to do anything other than their work. This can at times be a punch in the gut, as you described, and what I call soul crushing. But I am very glad you will not allow an incident such as this to take away from all the achievements of the unit you have accomplished and all that you have done for far more than a handful." These are the same words of the woman who would 9 months later place me under investigation for some of the same things contained in this email. Make it make sense. Her other was to thank me. I said, "Thank you." She said, "You're welcome. And I know you will, and I'm glad to be partnered with you," was her last statement. I then agreed with her and said, "Yes, please file this email with your reporting." In that reply, I said, "Hi, blank. Yes, please send the information to ISU. Thank you. If I had harmed staff in any way, I would stand tall for whatever I was due. I have had too many of the meritless complaints informally, not all rising to a level of formal complaint, and the staff then feel it is okay to use this when things don't go their way. I would sincerely appreciate this being sent and filed with your complaint. Thanks again, S." Her reply, "Consider it done." I said, "Thank you. I appreciate it as long as it is at least tracked. I don't think it will be my last. Restructuring anything can be uncomfortable for the comfortable. Have a great night. S." This was 9 months before the case was placed against me. And 6 of the people named, including one additional that's in here as well, 7 were in the 15 that were interviewed and who used some of the same things that had already been addressed 2 years earlier to claim that I had done them harm. As a matter of fact, those that actually were questioned that had very limited contact with me were reaching for things that made absolutely zero sense. Storytelling. There were few witnesses to the claims of what people were saying happened to them, but it was just their word that made the most sense. My word, when I tried to speak about it all the way up the chain, wasn't taken into consideration. 29 years dedicated so far to an organization that would drag my name through the mud, fabricate, make up stories, anonymous claims, because this is not the last one. There were 3 on this test run before October. This one just happened in January. And I was given the names of the anonymous complainers. Pretty sad. And in this, the back and forth exchange with my supervisor, she's supporting my actions because she knows that complaints come. They happen. But to have used them in a case that she and the chief opened, when I also spoke with the chief in March about some of the same things, giving her a packet with a breakdown of what was happening at my unit. And then again in July, addressing some things as well. My supervisor received a packet every month with her giving the information of what was happening within my unit. I called it the commander informational. Now, I know that wasn't a norm on the department, so most people will, oh, well, that wasn't a document that was used within the department. I beg to differ. There are a lot of processes that are overlooked, skipped, and sometimes taken out of context in order to fit whatever the narrative is at the time. It's sad that in this case, I was one to document quite a bit. It's sad that not only the first case was chock full of lies, but I was had another one just placed in my file because we're LASD and we can do that. I guess it's a David versus Goliath situation. Pretty sad. To all of the people involved in this, and those that even later added themselves by not doing anything and having no integrity to speak up and do the right thing when given the opportunity. To those who claimed they would review and look into my case and they didn't. I say, what if your family member had been done this way? More importantly, what if you had been done this way? I'm sure you would be singing a different song and dancing to a different tune. This is CC Strong with Spilling the LT, because this LT, her career was spilled. So I would rather people know the truth. And I look to help to others who actually have to go through something of this nature. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.